Good morning. This is Ron. Welcome to Story Time. And this is Sunday, July 9th, and we are on Law 17 of the 48 Laws of Power. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. Humans are creatures of habit with an insatiable need to see the familiarity in other people's actions. Your predictability gives them a sense of control. Turn the tables. Be deliberately unpredictable. Behavior that seems to have no consistency or purpose will keep them off balance, and they will wear themselves out trying to explain your moves. Taken to an extreme, the strategy can intimidate and terrorize. Nothing is more terrifying than the sudden and unpredictable. That is why we are so frightened by earthquakes and tornadoes. We do not know when they will strike. After one has occurred, we wait in terror for the next one. To a lesser degree, this is the effect that unpredictable human behavior has on us. Animals behave in set patterns, which is why we are able to hunt and kill them. Only man has the capacity to consciously alter his behavior, to improvise and overcome the weight of routine and habit. Yet most men do not realize this power. They prefer the comforts of routine, of giving in to the animal nature that has them repeating the same compulsive actions time and time again. They do this because it requires no effort, and because they mistakenly believe that if they do not unsettle others, they will be left alone. Understand, a person of power instills a kind of fear by deliberately unsettling those around him to keep the initiative on his side. You sometimes need to strike without warning, to make others tremble when they least expect it. It is a device that the powerful have used for centuries. Filippo Maria, the last of the Viscount Dukes of Milan in the 15th century Italy, consciously did the opposite of what everyone expected of him. For instance, he might suddenly shower a courtier with attention, and then, once the man had become to expect a promotion to higher office, would suddenly start treating him with the utmost disdain. Confused, the man might leave the court, when the Duke would suddenly recall him and start treating him well again. Doubly confused, the courtier would wonder whether his assumption that he would be promoted had become obvious and offensive to the Duke, and would start to behave as if he no longer expected such honor. The Duke would rebuke him for his lack of ambition and would send him away. The secret of dealing with Filippo was simple. Do not presume to know what he wants. Do not try to guess what will please him. Never inject your will. Just surrender to his will. Then wait to see what happens. Amidst the confusion and uncertainty he created, the Duke ruled supreme, unchallenged, and at peace. Unpredictability is most often the tactic of the master, but the underdog, too, can use it to great effect. If you find yourself outnumbered or cornered, throw in a series of unpredictable moves. Your enemies will be so confused that they will pull back or make a tactical blunder. In the spring of 1862, during the American Civil War, General Stonewall Jackson and a force of 4,600 Confederate soldiers were tormenting the larger Union forces in the Shenandoah Valley. Meanwhile, not far away, General George Brighton McClellan, heading a force of 90,000 Union soldiers, was marching south from Washington, D.C. to lay siege to Richmond, Virginia, the Confederate capital. As the weeks of the campaign went by, Jackson repeatedly led his soldiers out of the Shenandoah Valley, then back to it. His movements made no sense. Was he preparing to help defend Richmond? Was he marching on Washington, now that McClellan's absence had left it unprotected? Was he heading north to wreak havoc up there? Why was his small force moving in circles? Jackson's inexplicable moves made the Union generals delay the march on Richmond as they waited to figure out what he was up to. Meanwhile, the South was able to pour reinforcements into the town. A battle that could have crushed the Confederacy turned into a stalemate. Jackson used this tactic time and again when facing numerically superior forces. Always mystify, mislead, and surprise the enemy if possible, he said. Such tactics will win every time, and a small army may thus destroy a large one. This law applies not only to war, but to everyday situations. People are always trying to read the motives behind your actions and to use your predictability against you. Throw in a completely inexplicable move, and you put them on the defensive. Because they do not understand you, they are unnerved, and in such a state you can easily intimidate them. Pablo Picasso once remarked, "The best calculation is the absence of calculation. Once you have attained a certain level of recognition, others generally figure that when you do something, it's for an intelligent reason. So it's really foolish to plot out your movements too carefully in advance. You're better off acting capriciously." For a while, Picasso worked with the art dealer Paul Rosenberg. At first, he allowed him a fair amount of latitude in handling his paintings. Then one day, for no apparent reason, he told the man he would no longer give him any work to sell. As Picasso explained, Rosenberg would spend the next 48 hours trying to figure out why. Was I reserving things for some other dealer? I'd go on working and sleeping, and Rosenberg would spend his time figuring. In 2 days, he'd come back, nerves jangled, anxious, saying, "After all, dear friend, you wouldn't turn me down if I offered you this much," naming a substantially higher figure for those paintings rather than the price I've been accustomed to paying you, would you? Unpredictability is not only a weapon of terror, scrambling your patterns on a day-to-day basis will cause a stir around you and stimulate interest. People will talk about you, ascribe motives and explanations that have nothing to do with the truth, but that keep you constantly in their minds. In the end, the more capricious you appear, the more respect you will generate. Only the terminally subordinate act in a predictable manner. Sometimes predictability can work in your favor by creating a pattern for people to be familiar and comfortable with. You can lull them to sleep. They have prepared everything according to their preconceived notions about you. You can use this in several ways. First, it sets up a smokescreen, a comfortable front behind which you can carry on deceptive actions. Second, it allows you on rare occasions to do something completely against the pattern, unsettling your opponent so deeply he will fall to the ground without being pushed. In 1974, Muhammad Ali and George Foreman were scheduled to fight for the World Heavyweight Boxing Championship. Everyone knew what would happen. Big George Foreman would try to land a knockout punch, which Ali would dance around him, wearing him out. That was Ali's way of fighting, his pattern, and he had not changed it in more than 10 years. But in this case, it seemed to give Foreman the advantage. He had a devastating punch, and if he waited, sooner or later Ali would have to come to him. Ali, the master strategist, had other plans. In press conferences before the big fight, he said he was going to change his style and punch it out with Foreman. No one, least of all Foreman, believed this for a second. That plan would be suicide on Ali's part. He was playing the comedian as usual. Then, before the fight, Ali's trainer loosened the ropes around the ring, something a trainer would do if his boxer was intending to slug it out. But no one believed this ploy. It had to be a setup. To everyone's amazement, Ali did exactly what he said he would. As Foreman waited for him to dance around, Ali went right up to him and slugged that out. He completely upset his opponent's strategy. At a loss, Foreman ended up wearing himself out, not by chasing Ali, but by throwing punches wildly and taking more and more counterpunches. Finally, Ali landed a dramatic right cross that knocked out Foreman. The habit of assuming that a person's behavior will fit the previous patterns is so strong that not even Ali's announcement of a strategy change was enough to upset it. Foreman walked into a trap, the trap he had been told to expect. A warning: unpredictability can work against you sometimes, especially if you're in a subordinate position. There are times when it is better to let people feel comfortable and settle around you than to disturb them. Too much unpredictability will be seen as a sign of indecisiveness or even some more serious psychic problem. Patterns are powerful, and you can terrify people by disrupting them. Such power should only be used judiciously. And that's the end of Law 17 about being unpredictable. And the thing that, again, as I'm going through all of these laws, one person keeps springing to mind that these laws seem to reflect best, and that is Donald J. Trump. If you think about it, it really applies to this particular, his behavior really applies in this chapter, that being unpredictable, because he certainly is. He'll be going along, everything will seem fine, then all of a sudden he'll come out with some kind of a bizarre tweet. Or during his campaign, he will, his behavior seemed to be all over the map. He, again, unpredictable. Very, very difficult to predict individual. So, but again, it seems, and as it says almost explicitly in this chapter, that if you're a subordinate, such as most of us are, very few of us are Donald Trump, and but if you're a subordinate, then unpredictability is not always the best idea. Good idea if you're on top, good idea if you're the leader, if you're the CEO, if you're the president, the general, etc. But if you're not, maybe you ought to stick to being a little bit more predictable. Next time, next Saturday, which will be, let's see, the 15th, July 15th, we'll be doing reading, or I'll be reading Law 18. Law 18 is, do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. The world is dangerous and enemies are everywhere. Everyone has to protect themselves. A fortress seems to be the safest, but isolation exposes you to more dangers than it protects you from. It cuts you off from the valuable information. Well, it cuts you off from valuable information. It makes you conspicuous and an easy target. Better to circulate among people, find allies, mingle. You are shielded from your enemies by the crowd. And that's next week, next Saturday, the 15th of July. And until then, thank you for joining me and have a great week.